I saw the sun begin to dim and felt the winter wind blow cold. A man knows who is there for him when the glitter fades and the walls won't fade. But from that rubble, what remains can only be what's truth. If all was lost, there's more I've gained because it led me back to you. And from now on, these eyes will not be blinded by the lights. And from now on, what's waited till tomorrow starts tonight. Let this promise in me start like an anthem in my heart from now on. I want to thank you all for joining me this morning. There are two other presentations here, so I want to make sure that everybody that's in the room is here for the book presentation. If you're wanting to go to one of the other ones, now is a good time to leave. But for the rest of you, thank you so much for spending the next 30 minutes with me. Now, I want to kind of gauge the room. By a raise of hands, how many of you in the room are from Guatemala? Okay. And by a raise of hands, how many of you are not from Guatemala? Smaller group. And by a raise of hands, how many of you would not raise your hand no matter what I said? All right. So today, what I want to talk about is turning your ideas and words into books. And, for those of you that saw we're doing the Book Writer Retreat as part of Volcano Summit, we'll kind of explain some of the things that we're doing with that. But our objective in writing a book is to change the course of your life. Writing a book will help you make a name for yourself. It'll help you build your business and help you grow your finances. Now, by a raise of hands, how many of you, and I'm going to ask you to only raise your hands once on this, please. By a raise of hands, how many of you would like to use your words, ideas as a book to make a name? A few of you. All right, so if you just raise your hand, don't raise it again. How many of you would like to make a fortune from writing and promoting a book? A few of you. And finally, how many of you would like to make a difference with your content? So I think that's the majority of the rest of the group. So let me give you some realities about the book publishing industry to kind of set the context for the rest of this presentation. The average retail bookstore in North America, not just the United States, but in Central Latin America as well, carries about 100,000 titles. Of these 100,000 titles, between 70 to 80% are what we call backlist titles. Now, a backlist titles are your perennials, your classics, and last year's bestsellers. Last year in North America, not including self-published authors and things like KDP, Kindle Direct Publishing, there were more than 1,076,000 new books published, all vying for the opportunity to have shelf space for 20 to 30,000 books. So the industry is kind of set against those of us that are not in the know. What I pride myself in is being able to equilibralize the industry for each of us. I have a value that all of us are born with a sole purpose. This is a value that my client Garrett Gunnarsson gave me, and he says, we're all born with a sole purpose, and that sole purpose is given to you not for you, but for your service of your fellow man. And my sole purpose is voice. I help people find, test, and amplify their voice. So I'm going to go back again to the question I asked earlier. By raise of hands again, how many of you in the room have thought about writing a book? Okay. How many of you have thought about writing a book but felt overwhelmed? How many of you have felt overwhelmed by the opportunity to publish a book? A smaller number. And how many of you are overwhelmed with promoting your book? And, there's a reality to this. Most of us, if we've not done it before, it's an overwhelming, scary kind of thing. So, by a raise of hands, how many of you think that the weakest point that you were most overwhelmed with or needs support with is writing your book. Okay? So I want you to know, as we go through this presentation, that you can and will be a successful author. You're here, you're smart. I mean, you are in this room because you want to learn the tools and systems to be able to help you get to that point. But what you need to know is that you need to take it one step at a time. When I was 11 years old, I used to deliver a paper route in Provo, Utah, and I met a gentleman who went to Brigham Young University. It was a university out of Provo, and we became friends, and he invited me over one evening to watch a sporting event, and he gave me a big, giant bowl of popcorn, and he said, "Hey, do you think you can eat this whole bowl of popcorn?" I'm like, "Nah, it's too much." I was young, 11, and very thin at the time. And by the end of the sporting event, a couple of hours later, I'd eaten the entire bowl of popcorn. And my friend asked, "How did you do that?" I said, "I don't know." And he said, "You did it one kernel, one bite at a time." Writing your book, promoting your book, and publishing your book requires us looking at doing things one step at a time. So what I want you to know is that when you apply the systems that you're about to learn, that you have the opportunity to join an elite group of best-selling authors that I've worked with, people like Peter Diamandis, Ivan Meisner, T. Harv Eker, Gary Keller, CEO of Keller Williams, Marshall Goldsmith, and many, many others. You see, I've been able to successfully promote 130 consecutive books to the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Success, and USA Today bestsellers lists. And I've been able to do that with a perfect record. I'm literally 130 for 130. And that's because all of our best-selling authors decided to drop their hubris and take the lead from the work that we do for them. So, what I'm really proud about is not only that I've promoted 130 books to the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Success, and USA Today bestsellers list, but that in doing so, I was able to help my clients generate more than $3.85 billion in increased gross revenue. Right? All of these authors became bestsellers, but they did it in context of building something bigger, making a name, making money, or making a difference. So what we know is that for the sake of this presentation, what I want to focus on is the writing component. We're doing this one step at a time. And so yes, we've got writing, promoting, and publishing. And we address the publishing and promotion portion during our writer retreat, but I've been given 30 minutes for this presentation, so today we're going to focus on step number one, which is writing your book. And there are three main problems that most people have to overcome in writing their book. Number one is writer's block. How many of you have ever suffered from writer's block? A couple of you, okay. Another is called content soup. So content soup is actually the opposite of writer's block. It's when you have so many ideas, so many thoughts, so many places to start that it all gets kind of soup mixed up together and you don't really know what to do. And then there's perfectionism. So let me tell you a story about my client, Garrett Gunnarsson. Garrett Gunnarsson initially released his book, Killing Sacred Cows, in January of 2007. When the book was launched, it struggled to meet public acceptance. The book didn't sell well at all. And so what he did is he hired me, and what we did is we helped, this is what we do at the Book Writer Retreat, we helped him apply what we call the 4 pillars of communication to improving and enhancing the quality of his writing. The result was that Killing Sacred Cows made the Wall Street Journal, USA Today, and New York Times bestsellers list. This is applying just one of the tools, the 4 pillars of communication, that we teach during the Book Writer Retreat. Yep. There we go. So let's talk about problem number one, writer's block. Let's define that. Here's what Google says when you look to define writer's block. It's the condition of being unable to think of what to write or how to proceed with writing, as in, quote, the novelist recovered from a 2-year bout of writer's block. Now, I know that 2 years sounds like a lot of time, and for some writers that happens, but for most of us, it's a 2-hour or 2-day or 2-week or 2-month thing, right? But it's a legitimate reason that keeps us from writing our book. The second problem that I mentioned earlier is content soup. This is defined as having too many ideas, which overwhelms you with the possibilities, keeping you unable to figure out how to start and what to use as a starting point. This happens because you're not quite sure how your ideas will grab the attention of your readers and how you'll keep them moving. For many people who suffer from content soup, you'll spend weeks, months, and even years attempting to outline and structure your ideas into books, but nothing tends to work out. Your wisdoms and insights are buried under the unconvincing writing of this content soup. The third thing is perfectionism. Now, this is something that I personally suffer from, but it's important. Roy H. Williams says, if it's worth doing, it's worth doing poorly. Let me repeat that again. If it's worth doing, it's worth doing poorly. So what is perfectionism? Well, it's the fear of failure, right? Perfectionists often use unrealistically high standards for themselves. They fear that if their first efforts at writing aren't flawless, it's going to do terribly. The next is procrastination. Because we want everything to be perfect from the start, we often delay our writing. We wait for the perfect idea, the perfect time, or the perfect phrase, and it never comes. One of the books I worked on was for Roy H. Williams. He's known as the Wizard of Ads, and this was while I was a publisher at Bard Press. And Ray Bard, the publisher of Bard Press, needed Roy Williams to add 5 new chapters to his book. And Roy is a writer's writer. He said, "Ray, you just don't understand. I have to be in the mood. It's got to come to me. It's got to come out and flow. And it'll just be bad work if I write what you want." And Ray Bard said to Roy, he said, "Roy, that's not how writing works. That's not how content creation works at all. If you're a good writer, if you are a good purveyor of ideas, if you are a good artist, you are always a good writer. You are always a good purveyor of ideas. You are always a good artist. What happens is you define the quality of your work based on how you feel in the moment when you write it, not the actual quality." And so Ray bet Roy, he said, "In 5 years, come back to me and let's chat. And if you can name the 5 different chapters that you wrote, don't write these down, I will donate $10,000 to the nonprofit of your choice." Right? So 5 years later, we came back, we sat down at dinner, and lo and behold, Roy couldn't identify those 5 chapters. Right? Because how we view what we create is based on the emotion that we have in the moment. So perfectionism also stifles creativity. Striving for perfection can stifle creativity because perfectionists avoid experimenting with new ideas or styles or fear that they won't ever get it done perfectly. Again, Roy Williams said, if it's worth doing, it's worth doing poorly. So what are the solutions for writer's block? Well, at the Book Writer Retreat, one of the things that we take our clients through is what we call rapid content creation. This is a process that emphasizes revision and iteration, and it uses sprints, short actions over a short period of time, to be able to get the work done. You see, with rapid content creation, we emphasize revision and iteration. We run you through sprints to train you in the skill of not getting it perfect on the first try. Because if you're trying to get it perfect the first time, it's not going to happen. Every writer that we take through this process, whether it's privately or at our retreats, end up with 16 chapters with 4 subheadings in each chapter for their book. And they do this within about an hour. And our clients are usually shocked, as you would be as well, at how well this process works. So let's talk about what is the solution for content soup. We call this the 4 pillars of effective communication. And these 4 pillars apply in all content creation. It doesn't matter if it's an email, a social media post, an article, a blog post, a white paper, or a book. The 4 pillars are big idea. The big idea is what's new, surprising, or different. What's going to move the needle on the who gives a crap meter, right? If there's not a big idea, why would your readers care, right? So you have to have a very clear big idea. Tied to that big idea then is story, right? The objective of a story is to make your experiences relatable to your reader, right? We all have unique experiences, but what makes a work a masterpiece is the ability of the reader to identify personally with the experiences that you've gone through and to know that they are not alone. And in knowing that they are not alone, that in your getting through whatever opportunity or problem that you worked through, that they too can get through similar situations. The next is what we call the nuts and bolts. Now, about a third of my clients work within the personal development industry, and the rest of them mainly work in business and leadership and thought leadership in that category. And what we find is that most writers are really good at either stories or really good at nuts and bolts. And in most personal development books, most biographies and most stories, what is missing that is the relatable part to the reader that makes your experienceable valuable to them, right? If you have an experience that I can't replicate or can't see myself in, how is that story valuable to me? Well, the nuts and bolts are the step-by-step process, the how-to, so based on the story, on how I, the reader, can implement what you learned. If you did the right thing, what are the how-to steps that you took in order to be able to create that outcome? If you did the wrong thing, which happens more often than not in the story, what are the things that you learned and what are the steps that you should have taken in order to be able to create that outcome? And the final step, and again, this is all how we solve the problem of content soup. We do this with our clients directly, we do this at our book writer retreat, is the 4 pillars of effective communication, and the 4th pillar is hope, right? So you've caught my attention with the big idea, which is great. You've told me a compelling story. You've given me the details on how to implement what you learned, but now you have to convince me as the reader that I too can create the same outcome that you just created, right? And while it sounds a little formulaic, and it is, these elements are essential for the content that you're writing to have impact and influence over your reader. Remember, you're not writing your book for you. Your book is not intended for you. It's written for your reader. Winston Churchill said, "Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts." So, what are the solutions for perfectionism? Number 1, we embrace imperfection. We prefer to focus on the first drafts. We train our writers, our clients, how to write freely and unencumbered without worrying about what the final product is going to be. Hemingway said, there is no such thing as a good writer, only a good editor. There is no such thing as a good writer. Only a good editor. The next thing that we do is we set realistic goals, right? We do things in short sprints to allow it to be easy to get things done. At the back of the room is a good friend of mine, and I'm not sure where he is. His name is Alex Mendozian. Alex Mendozian is a legend in the internet marketing world. He was the creator of, how many of you know what a squeeze page is? Squeeze page is where you ask for somebody's email, name and email address, in exchange they get something. Alex was the creator of that back in the 90s. He's a brilliant man, and he's going to be helping us at the 2-day retreat later this week. And one of the things that I learned from him that we implement in all of our work is to make sure that we do things in very clear and distinct sprints, and that we always take a break around 53 to 56 minutes every single hour to ensure that we don't get overwhelmed. We also want to make sure that both at our retreats and individually, that you practice self-compassion. Again, it's not about the first draft. No such thing as a good writer. It's about getting the ideas out in an organized fashion. And finally, what we advocate, and we of course do this very easily at the retreat, is to seek feedback, right? Make sure that you're working with people that you know and trust, and get their feedback and input and be open to it. Now, at our retreat, of course, we've got our writing coaches and editors and other things, and that's how we take care of that. But it's important to make sure that you're always seeking feedback. So I want to talk really briefly about our book writing retreat, which is going to be on, and we have a special thing, it's going to be Tuesday and Wednesday of next week after the Volcano Summit ends, and this is a Volcano Summit writer retreat. During that retreat, we're going to help you overcome these three things: the content soup, perfectionism, and writer's block, right? And we're going to do that through the processes and systems that we've got in place. And we've been able to do that for, again, 130 of our clients, resulting in those authors becoming best-selling authors. So I have a question. How many of you would like to be not just an author, but a best-selling author? How many of you would like to make a name, make money, or make a difference at the level where you increase your business or your lifestyle by $1 million in revenue per year? Okay? I've done that for 110 of my clients. The people that go to our retreats, our clients, we've had 110 out of 130 do that. We've had 10 of our clients increase their gross revenue by more than 50 million and 7 by more than $100 million. So let me ask you a quick question. By raise of hands, how many of you think that you'd be able to write a book on your own without some of the tools that we just gave? So 1, 2, okay, so just a couple of you, which is fine. At our retreat, for the rest of you, we help you overcome writer's block, overcome content soup, and overcome perfectionism. Now, for those of you that think you could write your own book, if you can, please go and do it. But I would ask you this. If you were going to write a book, why haven't you already done that? Mutual of Omaha did a life insurance study back in 1983. And what they did is they interviewed 1,000 patients who had a progressive disease and were potentially terminal. And with the support of experts and scientists and doctors, they came up with a game plan on a case-by-case basis to be able to help those terminally ill people be able to live a longer, more healthy lifestyle. The results? Only 7% of those patients successfully changed their lifestyles. By a show of hands, if you had a terminally ill disease, how many of you would, and you had the plan to be able to solve that, how many of you would follow that plan? I'd hope to see everybody's hands up on that question. So based on the abysmal results that they had on that first study, Omaha Life Insurance did a second follow-up study. And they did this under the direction of the famous Dr. Dean Ornish. And similar to the first program, they were given a full, detailed plan on what they needed to do. But this time, what Omaha Insurance did is they added in additional support. Things like community meetups, one-on-one coaching, right? They had ongoing education. So they didn't just leave it to the individual to do it on their own. They made sure that they did the proper accountability follow-up work. The results? 77% of patients made the changes that saved their life. By a raise of hands, how many of you would prefer to be part of the 7% of the first study? Gratefully, nobody raised their hand. How many of you would prefer to be part of the 77% of the second study? I hope that most everybody's hand should be up on that. So we know that a lot of people wanted to go to the book writer retreat. We had a lot of people reaching out to John and Fabiana and myself about the retreat, but due to scheduling problems, meaning staying an extra week was just outside of the realm of possibility, a lot of you weren't able to stay. So what we decided to do, what the Volcano Summit Committee and John decided to do, was to make this a really simple opportunity for all of you, right? And so what we're doing is we're not doing a week-long retreat. We're doing a 2-week condensed mini retreat on Tuesday and Wednesday. And more importantly, the most important part, the book outlining process that we do, where you'll end up with the 16 chapters, 4 topics, the big idea, story, nuts, and bolts for each of those topics. We do the first 4 hours of the first day on Tuesday. So if you are in town and you can't change your tickets, this is an opportunity for you to attend, and we're just charging our cost, which is the cost of the room, at $150. Right? We would love for you to be able to come, even for the first morning, to be able to get the book outlining process completed. Right? One of the things that we're going to do is, and so you're aware, it's $150 to attend, whether it's for the 4 hours or for the 2 days. We'd love to have you for 2 days. We recognize that most of you may only be able to stay for the morning of Tuesday. We do have a $150 deposit when you attend. And to make this a little easier for you guys, again, most of you want time and opportunity to chat with me about your book, about your business, about making your book a bestseller. For the first 15 of you that sign up for the 2-day at $150, I'm going to give you a 1-hour free consult with me. Not a sales pitch. It's going to be straight up consulting on your book, on your business, and what you're doing, and how to be able to take your book to the next level. So if you sign up, we're going to have that. And as a really quick side note to that, if you're not able to attend afterwards, the 6th and the 7th of, I believe it's the 6th and 7th of September, we're going to be doing a virtual version of this as well. It's still $150, but we'll be doing that for those of you that aren't able to make it on the 3rd and the 4th. Really quick, I do want to point to the back of the room. We've got Jesse and Alex at the back of the room at the table back there. They've just handed out order forms if you want to attend. There is a QR code that you need to click on to be able to pay Volcano Summit, which they have at the back of the room. I want to leave you with a thought from based on the second best-selling book of all time. That book was second only to the Bible, was written by an author I think most of you probably know, named Miguel Cervantes. He wrote, of course, Don Quixote. In 1958, Joe Darian wrote the music for the musical Don Quixote and La Mancha. And in it came the greatest song for artists, authors, musicians, and entrepreneurs in the world, to dream the impossible dream. And I think most people fail to hear that, to know the lyrics. And the lyrics go, to dream the impossible dream, to fight the unbeatable foe, to bear with unbearable sorrow, to go where the brave dare not go, to right the unrightable wrong, to love pure and chase from afar, to try when your arms are too weary, to reach the unreachable star. This is my quest, to follow that star, no matter how hopeless, no matter how far, to fight for the right without question or pause, to be willing to march into hell for a heavenly cause. And I know if I'll only be true to that glorious quest, that my heart will lay peaceful and calm when I'm laid to my rest. And the world will be better for this, that one man or woman, scorned and covered in scars, still strove with his last ounce of courage to reach the unreachable star. Go out and march into hell for your heavenly cause, and go write your book. Thank you so much. So,